Well, welcome to the Business Spotlight panel series. My name is Tanner O'Brien. I'm a senior partner here at Action Coach in Central Texas. And today I'm sitting down with coaches and, coaches of different industries, things like that. And it's so much fun to sit down and have just some general conversations, talk about coaching, talk about business, talk about kind of leadership, everything else under the sun when it comes to what's it like to be a coach these days, that sort of thing. So first off, I want to say thank you to the guests that I have here today. I've got Paige. I'm not even going to try to pronounce her last name. I'll let her do it for me. Owner of PHH Coaching, and Chad Wright, who's the founder and coach at Forward Partners. So Chad, Paige, thank you so much for being here. If we could, let's just start with a little bit of background. Paige, I'm gonna go over to you first. If you would share with the audience here, tell us who you are, tell us what type of coaching you do, and tell us just kind of I don't know, couple minute version of your journey to getting to where you are today.
And how to pronounce your last name.
And how to pronounce your last name. Yes.
Absolutely. I think it's spelled out phonetically on my website. We'll see. But I'm Paige Hadziselimovic. And if you happen to know Serbo-Croatian or Bosnian, then you can pronounce it. But if you don't know it, you are just out of luck. I happened to marry a Bosnian war refugee. And he wanted somebody in this country with his last name. And so I switched from Hamilton to Hadziselimovic. But I got to say, I'm glad I did, because it always makes for interesting conversation. I'm actually a native to Central Texas. And I am a mindset coach. I also do educational coaching for social emotional learning and behavior management frameworks. So I have two very different, and yet I feel like they work together, perspectives. And it has to do with my background. My professional background is as a public educator. I was a principal in Central Texas. And at age 39, I got diagnosed with a rare genetic disorder. It left me disabled. I became medically retired with the teacher retirement system of Texas at age 40. And I feel like I lost my identity, honestly. I always wanted to help people. I always wanted to be an educator. I loved leading my school. We had such a great partnership. We achieved some incredible things, especially with regards to social emotional learning and behavior. And all of a sudden I couldn't do those things. And I was left with this major question of, who am I, right? If I'm not those things, if I am not a public school principal, then what am I? And so I've spent the last 3 years spending a lot of time on that question and defining myself aside from the things that I do, defining myself as core values and figuring out in really creative ways I can still contribute to society, but maybe not on a campus like I once did. It's actually pretty strenuous work. And that led me to coaching. I've been coached by an incredible mindset coach who, as she describes mindset, she calls it a quarter turn. It's just a slight shift in your perspective that helps you open up and see things in such a more opportunistic way, such a more empowering way. And so I've benefited from great coaching. And of course, then I was like, I'm going to become a coach, right? So I actually formed my business back in February. And I am officially now a mindset coach and certified and all the things, building my business. And I love working with people to look at limiting beliefs and shift that mindset into something they can do instead of the focus on what they can't do or the obligations that might be holding them back in their lives. So that's me.
That is fantastic. There's so much in there that I'm excited to dive into over the conversation today. But
I want to hear more of that story. That's fascinating.
Yeah, no kidding. But no, thank you. I'm so excited to have you here. So excited to be jumping into this conversation. So Chad, if you could give us kind of background, 10,000 foot view of who you are, kind of your journey into what you got you to this point where you are today.
I was working with an organization the other day, and it's a business. They're very, very good at what they do. And they're in this world where money is everything. Money, it's all about success. It's all about just how much money are you making and this. And we were having a weekend retreat for them. We were sitting Friday night at the kind of get to know everybody dinner, fantastic steakhouse. And And one of the guys looked at me, he said, "So what's your rags to riches story?" And I said, the funny thing is I don't have one. I said, my story is I started a business back in 2005. And through the process of running a business, I experienced burnout so severe that I almost lost my family, almost lost my business, my home, everything. And over time, I learned how to not do that. I learned how to lead myself. I learned how to lead others, and slowly evolved it into, this is what we do now. We teach others how to not burn out. We teach them how to care for themselves and lead in a healthy way and build thriving organizations. And so it's not rags to riches in a monetary sense, but it is in terms of quality of life and learning how to actually do the things that we should be doing, and understanding that, the way the world teaches us that everything is all about hustle. Hustle is great. It's a tool, it's a thing to use, but it's also this very limited resource. And so understanding that and learning that and building out our systems, that was kind of a journey we started back in, I guess, 2016. Because over that time, I did a lot of bad leading of myself, of others. I did a lot of damage, and started to develop philosophy on how not to do that. And I remember we created kind of some stuff around it, and I took it to a really well-respected woman in business. And I said, "Hey, here's what we're thinking. Are we crazy?" Because our previous business was marketing and branding and design. And this just felt wildly different. And took it to her and I said, "Hey, are we crazy for doing this? This seems nuts." And she goes, "No, this is already what you do. You just don't charge for it." And she said, "Not only that, here's 2 events you're going to speak at in the next month about this." And I'm like, this is not a thing. This is not, it doesn't exist. This is just an idea. She's like, "I don't care. Show up, be ready to talk." And so thankfully I had a marketing company. So we built websites, banners, logos, all the things in like a month. And it just started and has evolved from there. We spend a lot of our time, probably 60-70% of our time now is in the public space with cities, with police departments, doing leadership coaching for them, which was not part of the plan. But that second talk that I gave for that organization, the police lieutenant came up afterwards, like, "Can you teach cops?" And I'm like, "Absolutely, I can teach cops." You know how it is when you first start a business. You're like, yes to literally everything. And so we've learned a lot over the 5 years and really have evolved this into something that is having an impact bigger than what I planned on. And so I'm just excited to see where it goes, to continue to open up into new markets, to get this idea out there, because everywhere we end up working, we see lives change. We see people start to go from that, what you were talking about, what challenges are stopping me, what can I not do, to, hey, what can I do, what can I control? And it's funny because we developed it for business owners, and then you take it in the public world with city managers, it's needed. With police chiefs, it's needed. Frontline officers, it's needed all over the place. I'm fascinated to hear more about your the education coaching you do, because I would love to be able to get into education someday and be able to help teachers with burnout and that kind of thing. So yeah,
Partner,
so
that is fine.
that's how these things work, right? We appear on a thing together for 5 minutes. We've known each other for a solid 5 minutes now, and we'll just start something. It'll work.
And I love this. It's amazing to me when we think about the from mindset to education to leadership and avoiding burnout and things like that. It's all stuff like, if I look back even in my journey, it was never taught. Like I didn't
Yeah.
go to school and learn how to manage my own mindset. I didn't learn how
Yeah.
to be an actual effective leader and work with others in an effective way. Not really. There's some kind of side stuff in there, but it goes to show that there's so much of a need, whether people are able to articulate it or not, in the types of things that we do. So if we could, I'd love to just kind of start on this topic of coaching and
Mhm.
different aspects of it there, and then we can kind of shift the conversation into what's it like to actually run a coaching business, and like the actual business side of it, and taking some of the coaching piece out. So Paige, you had mentioned having a coach that coached you before coming into being a coach. Maybe talk a little bit more about what that impact was, because I have
Oh,
to believe,
wow.
well, not maybe not have to believe. I've talked to several coaches, even within our franchise system, that don't have coaches, have never had a coach before. And it's dramatically different, those who have kind of gone through that process and understand it, at least from my perspective. So I'd love to hear, how has that impacted everything that you've done, being able to actually say, yes, I am a coach, but I've also had a coach or still have a coach?
Yeah. Oh wow. I mean, it was life-changing. And I'll start with that. Um, I really lean towards spiritual coaching in the beginning. And again, it goes back to defining who I am in terms of what I believe. I mean, our beliefs form our thoughts, which then result in actions. And so I was led to spiritual coaching, and I've always been very, very open-minded. I didn't really want to define myself in any specific religion, but I wanted to honor myself spiritually. And that is how I found my coach. Um, and at first, I can tell you it was really irritating because she just kept asking me questions and I went to her for the answers. And so how annoying was that? Um, and certainly that has helped me have more compassion and empathy for new coaching clients when they're going. A lot of times I'll be asking questions and I'll ask a hard question, but instead of, pausing and being comfortable with the silence, they say, well, I don't know the answer. You're the coach. Just tell me what to do. And of course, coaching doesn't exactly work that way. Um, I worked with this coach for 2 years, and then we don't have a regular schedule now, but we still touch base regularly. We probably, we talk at least once a month. Um, and because she asked questions, because she made me do the work, it changed everything. Um, I had been diagnosed with something. I thought my career was over. I thought I couldn't do things. And that was quickly becoming my identity. And it was victim mentality. Um, well, that didn't exactly fly with her, to be honest with you. She wasn't buying the victim mentality. It was always like, well, what can you do? Well, what choice do you want to make? Well, how badly do you want to make that choice? And because I did the work, it had this profound impact on who I am at my core. Um, and I really realized I had been doing it all wrong, kind of like Chad was talking about with, yes, we've done the bad leadership. We've done certainly my self-talk needed a whole overhaul. Um, and I was a go-getter. I think I still am a go-getter in some ways, but stillness and meditation is so essential to my being. And actually, my mantra is I am worthy by being, not by doing. And it was my coach that helped me develop that. And because I know I am worthy by being, it actually affects everything that I do. And I'm not going to do something at the expense of my being, which means everyone's getting, at least in terms of client facing, they're getting the best of me. And unfortunately, I think as a public educator, that's not a luxury that teachers and campus principals and even district leaders have in the moment. But yeah, that small shift, realizing that my worth had nothing to do with my career, it had nothing to do with my success. It had everything to do with who I am at my core. Um, it changed everything.
Mm.
Hey, real quick, something you said there. You said, I think I used to be a go-getter. And it's so funny how we fall into this trap of we talk about rest all the time. I'm a broken record when it comes to rest. And it's trying to get people to understand it doesn't mean you're not a hustler. You're not a go-getter because you're resting. You are getting ready to actually effectively go get things, right? I talk to leaders all day who are just, I'm working 20 hours a day. Great. What'd you get done? I don't know. Well, I can tell you what I got done. I got 3 things done today, and they were the right things because I rested and my mind is clear and I'm ready to rock. And so I have a feeling you're a go-getter still. It just looks different. It's more effective, probably.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Chad. And I think you're right. And I think that's something powerful that coaching gives you. It's like suddenly I can give myself permission
Yes.
to rest and restore and revive so that when I decide I'm going to go get something,
Yeah.
it's successful, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, I love that so much. I come from an athletic background. I did collegiate swimming, did swimming in high school, things like that. And I literally just had a conversation with a gentleman who was a former pro athlete. Was like 100-yard dasher, I think, track and field. It was like literally hundreds of second off of making it to the Olympics. But one thing that he shared with me that like resonated, that I think plays to this here, is the um, in physical activity, and you're going really, really hard, and you're training all the time. The best way to get better is to stop and recover and take the time off, because if you just keep going, it's
Yeah.
not going to yield. You'll have like that decreasing ability to have the output or the desired outcomes. And it, at least in my world, it's always been really easy to understand that, from an athletic physical standpoint. Like I can feel physical fatigue, and I don't know, oftentimes it's overlooked from the mental, the mindset side of
Yes.
things, and being able to say, no, it's okay to take a break. I need to block out 30 minutes of my day that's literally for nothing other than me. Just go sit under a tree quietly, or
Yeah.
whatever it is, right?
Family
That
Go to
vacation.
Durango.
yeah. It's amazing to me that these are, some of these things aren't taught. So I don't know, Chad, if you want to like jump in and kind of talk about, because I know this is kind of your area a bit more, but I wanted
It's
to share
not
that.
even that these things are not taught. It's that literally the opposite is taught. That if you are resting, that you're wasting time, that it rise and grind, you got to get things done. And we do have to get things done. And it's funny. Like I feel like I work really hard, but I work way more intentionally than I used to. Because what I found in the middle of my worst burnout was I was working hard. I was putting in 17 hours a day every day of the week for years and getting nothing done and finding no success, finding no, and eventually ending with like one of those pivotal moments in life where it's like, okay, things change, or I'm not going to have this beautiful family anymore. I'm not going to, like, look at my health at the time was terrible. Like nothing was going well despite the hard work. And so it's so funny with leaders. We try so hard to get them to learn to value rest and to really embrace it. And it's the hardest thing for them to learn. It's the thing they fight me on the most. We'll work with people for a year and they struggle with this, struggle. And then something will happen. They'll get away. I had a leader recently who he went on a camping trip with his son for Boy Scouts, zero internet connection for 3 days. So he was genuinely disconnected. And he came back and he looked at me, he goes, "Is this what you've been telling me the whole time?" I'm like, "Yeah, this is it." Like, this is what you've been missing. Because he came back so energized and with new ideas. And I always tell people, like, your best idea is not going to happen in front of your computer. It is sitting under a tree. It is like I go for an hour-long walk every morning when I can, and it's the most valuable hour of my entire day. Everything we've ever taught, every visual we've created, every new concept, new idea, new way of thinking about things, I can point on my route where I was when that idea popped into my head.
Mhm.
And it was not in front of the computer. It was not engaged in work. But that is so hard to get people to understand. We come from this industrial idea of you're putting in the hours, you're working 8 hours a day. And what are you getting done in those 8 hours? Well, human creativity and human growth doesn't look like being engaged constantly. And it's so hard to get people to see it as an investment. But when they do, they go, "Oh, this is literally the most valuable thing I can be doing right now." And understanding rhythms and what they should look like, man, it's so hard for us to grasp, but it is so vital. That's where you start to see the changes. You start to see the work I'm doing now matters. The things that we're engaged with, we know they're the most important because we've done the work to really be healthy when we show up. And so seeing those changes in people becomes incredibly exciting.
Mm, I love that. It's probably in the last maybe 6 to 12 months, kind of noticed that for myself. It is more and more gets put on the calendar. More and more things
Yeah.
I have to get done. I have to go through this. I have to, a
Yeah.
lot of task driven stuff, not even necessarily, strategic, bigger things. It's, I have a lot of tasks to do. And then I realized that the only time that I really move things forward and think through what's the appropriate strategy is when I do finally take a step back. It might be on Sundays. I like to go out for a walk, like do nothing else other than just go for a walk, and usually about an hour. And that's where my brain just opens up the most. Like, here's the solution to that problem that I've been thinking about all week, and it like
Yep.
could not come up with something. It's absolutely amazing. For those that are watching that are listening to this later on, just give it a shot, try it, because sometimes, at least I've found personally, that until I experienced it and knew what that felt like, I couldn't prioritize it properly. And in the moment that I experienced it, it was like, okay, this needs to become a priority.
Yeah,
Well, it's the same
absolutely.
reason yes. And it's the same reason why ideas come to people in the shower.
Yes.
Because when you're in the shower, you're focusing on like one thing and you're not focusing on all the other things. And that's
Yeah.
why suddenly these like great ideas come to you in the shower. And it's the same principle. And you can imagine how exponentially better that gets when you're intentional about it, right?
Yes. Yeah. You can turn it on. You can choose to do it every day. And when you choose not, it's kind of like, honestly, it's a lot like working out. Like if we choose to work out every day, we're going to look up in 6 months and we're going to be in a much better place. If we choose not to, we're not. It is exactly the same thing when it comes to building an organization or a business. You choose to do the hard things. And that's the funny part, is the hard things in leadership. It's not pushing a bunch of weight around. It's sitting, it's quiet, it's rest, it's rhythms, and that is so hard for us to do. We would rather go push weight around. We really would.
Isn't that the truth? So I want to ask a question around, Paige, you had mentioned, when working with a coach in general, and one of the things being asking a bunch of questions and getting to the point where, no, that's not acceptable. You're going to have to go do the work. And I can see that can resonate with that across the board. And how important is that? Now, just open question to you both here on the call. Um, Having to go do the work yourself instead of having somebody do it for you. How important is that in this journey of coaching?
It's the most important thing. Um, and the neuroscience supports it. There are great articles and great coaches that have just a ton of experience in research and neuroscience. Obviously, I'm not a neuroscience, but a scientist, but um, a coach's job is to lead people to insight, or not necessarily even lead. I don't like the word lead. It sounds too directive, but
Because we would have to have it in the first place.
yes, exactly. We usually don't. But to partner with someone so that together we get there. And insight is one of the most phenomenal things. There's all kinds of things firing in the brain when an insight happens, but it has to come from within a person. It can't come from outside of a person. And so, when we're stuck most, we're going to continue to be stuck if we keep trying the same thing over and over and over. It's when you relax and let go and go take a shower, or go to Durango, Colorado, or whatever it is, that you are allowing insight to happen. And the great thing about coaching is there's actually something called attention density in neuroscience. And if you apply attention density to something, it's going to expedite your journey to insight, right? And a coach can facilitate that process, right? A coach can help facilitate that attention in a direction that is meaningful and useful and productive for you. And it'll get you to insight more quickly than if you were doing it on your own. And when it comes from within, it'll stick with you. If it is just the nutritionist telling me again how unhealthy my habits are, telling isn't going to do much for me. That isn't going to produce long-term change, right?
Yeah,
But doing the work yourself will.
absolutely. And there's a curiosity to it. Like when I started coaching, I'd never been formally trained as a coach, but I'm very curious. I love asking questions. And so I always tell people my value to an organization is that I am not inside the organization. And so I get to come in and I look at how we're doing things and I go, hey, why the hell are we doing this? Well, that's the way we've always done it. I'm like, well, what if we just knock that off? What if we stop doing that? And it's funny how often they can actually look at it and go, yeah, I don't think we have to do that anymore. And it could be this thing that's causing so many problems, but it's just this curiosity to continue. And this is something I was actually writing for some leaders the other day, was the idea of staying curious, of not jumping to, I got to solve this problem because I got this problem over here and this problem over here and this problem over here. We do have all those, but stay curious longer, because what you're going to find is probably better solutions. And that to me, that's a coaching skill that applies directly to every single leader out there, to stay curious, to ask more questions, to not feel like we have to have an answer just instantly. Because I often don't. I'm still humbled at how often a client will ask a question or have a problem. I don't know the answer, but I do know questions to get the brain moving and get them discovering answers. And that's such a fun process. But it is a little, it's kind of humbling. It's almost this, it's kind of like putting on an improv show. Like you don't know what you're going to walk out with. You just walk in, you stay curious, you see what happens. And something good always happens, but you have to stay engaged with it long enough to get to that point and not jump off and be like, well, I don't know, let's Google it. We'll see, you know?
Yeah,
I love.
no, the ability to ask questions is so powerful. That I'd heard kind of I don't know if I want to call it definition of coaching, but I'd heard kind of an analogy, maybe that's it, with coaching once upon a time that was essentially guiding individuals to the answers that they need. Whether we have the insights or we have it or whatever it is or not, being able to
Yeah.
continue to drive into that, be unreasonable with the types of answers that they're willing to give and guiding them to the areas that they actually need.
Yeah. And part of it too is helping them have hope that the answer exists. It's funny, you were talking about when people get trapped in, well, I've got this happening and this happening and this, and I can't, I can't. Part of it is having hope that they can. And so that's something beyond curiosity I think we bring to the table is better is possible. You may not see the path and I may not fully know the path, but I know it's possible. And I think that comes from being coached. Like I always have a rotation of two coaches all the time. And I think the reason I am is because they have invested in me and because they have helped me see that better is possible. And so I'm then able to go, oh, hey, guy, girl, lady, woman, whatever, no matter how broken you are, guess what? I'm with you. I'm right there alongside you. I've been on that journey and I can tell you there's hope. And so helping them see that matters deeply. Like I think that you can believe for them even when they can't believe. And I think there's something powerful to that.
I love that you said that because the most common limiting belief that I come across when I'm coaching
Mhm.
clients is it's really the fear that it's not safe to hope, right?
Yes.
It,
Yeah.
it's the
It's
I
easier
don't
to be
wanna
cynical.
hope because
Yeah.
it's just easier if I think I can't, right? I don't have to
Yes.
risk being disappointed. I don't have
Yeah.
to risk being wrong. I don't have to risk failure.
Yeah.
And that's a hard belief to overcome. But it is possible when you help people look at it from other perspectives. If you're
Yes.
repeating to yourself, I'm afraid, I'm afraid, I'm afraid. Well, that's part of an I
Uh,
can't cycle.
so I'll give you a really good example of this. I had a call with my coach 2 weeks ago, one of my coaches. So my wife was recently diagnosed with cancer and it's very early, it's stage 0. It's still incredibly complex to go through the process and it's scary. So it's kind of one of those, we know it's not going to kill her, but we don't know how much pain we have to go through to get to the other side. And so, boy, that hit us. It really just took the wind out of our sails. And so I had a call with one of my coaches and she said, how would you have to see cancer to where it wasn't terrifying to you? And I got to thinking about it. And I said, cancer really is just a sickness that is wrapped in a story. And that story is terrifying. But the reality is, so many people, if you look at the statistics, for so many of these cancers, for the one she has, it's a 99% success rate. And yet we're going to focus on the one. We're going to focus on this. And so I rewrote the story as it is a few rogue cells in her body that we are going to go to the doctor and they are going to fix. And my coach said, it sounds a lot like a cold. And I'm like, it really is. That story is similar. And so it's funny now how often when cancer will pop up in my head or when we'll hit a new barrier to the process or whatever, when my brain starts to spiral, I stop and I just tell that story. It's a few rogue cells that we're going to go to the doctor and they're going to fix. And it recenters me on I can live through that story. I can manage that story. I can do good things in that story. But it's that quarter turn you talked about, right? It's not saying cancer doesn't exist. It's not saying there's not going to be pain. It's saying that it is something we are going to get through. And I think that rewriting of the story, even something as big and scary as cancer, if you can rewrite those stories, it changes your approach to everything. There's something powerful about being able to do that and to equip leaders to do that with every scenario they face, every situation that pops up.
Mm. It's such a powerful story. Appreciate you sharing that with us.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Hey, we're gonna listen. If we got to go through this, we're gonna use this for some good. I
I love
determined
that.
that from the very beginning.
I love that. It's such an amazing perspective. If I could, I'm gonna kind of
Yeah.
shift our conversation a little bit because I do want to be respectful of the time that we do have together here
Mhm.
today, and I want to kind of jump a little bit more into building a coaching business and what that's like. We've got number of other coaches that will watch this down the road that are like, all right, I'm
Mhm.
trying to build my business. I'm looking for kind of what are the best practices, the challenges to overcome when it comes to actually building the business that is a coaching practice or a coaching firm. So I, maybe we just start with kind of just general philosophy or some of the biggest lessons that y'all have learned in this journey of actually starting to run the business side of this coaching practice.
Yeah. Jump in first, Paige. Go for it.
So many things. Wow. You know, speaking of identity, and the stories that we create, I think you have to look at creating a business is a telling of a story, just like Chad was.
Mhm.
And you have to for me, I had to sit down and get really clear and really specific on the story I was going to tell. And that sitting down didn't happen once. It happened dozens of times because I would get what I thought was really specific and realize it wasn't specific enough. Um, and so it was always like, two steps forward, one step back, because I would start developing a tool. Oh, I'm going to develop my website and it's going to have everything I'm going to offer because I have this clear vision. But I really just have to get good and enough content in like two of the services I'm offering before I can offer everything. If I'm
Yeah.
going to do it really effectively and in a meaningful way for other people, as well as for myself. And so I think that process can't be avoided. And I mean, I think we could all, I would love to I should start putting like a dime in a jar every time I get an advertisement on LinkedIn or Facebook or any of the things of a person who's going to get me, 100 new clients using their method.
Could you use an extra $50,000 a month? Good Lord, it pisses me off.
Yes.
Sorry.
No, I agree. And that's why we have the dime jar and we can donate it to charity, do something really incredible with it. But like, I know enough from the process and the challenges I've been through in my own life to know that no one else's system is going to fix it for me. And so I have chosen to go really slow. I do have another full-time job where I feel like I'm making a difference and I get to work with incredible people. And that is really a blessing for me because I am newer to the profession. And people are always like, well, if you're doing that and you're still working two jobs, you're still planning for worst case scenario. But I don't feel like that at all. That is not where my mindset is. And I think as long as you're really upfront with that, and you're really honest with yourself about those things, then that can be a great thing for some people. Go slow to go fast. I think building a following and meaningful connections, not just looking at numbers of, oh, I have so many connections on LinkedIn, I have so many connections on Facebook, but actually engaging with people, even seeking out people who might have a different perspective, because we can always learn from that. I think that all of those things play into it. And then you have to keep coming back to that refinement process of, okay, why am I doing this? Who am I trying to reach? How specific can my messaging be? Because as I go and I have more clients, like naturally there's a client that tends to be attracted to me, right? And almost always it's problems in my own life that I'm attracting. Right? Because we see whatever comes up for people in coaching is usually an issue for us in our own lives as well. And so leaning into that process and not being afraid to put the brakes on, at least for me, when I need to, because in fact, I haven't really been on social media the last 2 weeks because things have been gearing up with my educational coaching job. And I'm fine. I still feel like PHH coaching is a priority moving forward. But I know, again, a mindset to pick and choose what I'm focusing on so that everything I do is then intentional and meaningful and effective is really the most important thing. And when this training season is over with my educational coaching job, then I'll probably come back and start developing more content again for PHH coaching. So I don't know, it's just a cycle, and it's okay, I think, to take steps back. At least it has been for me.
We everything we have, like I've got these, I don't know if you can see, I got these bracelets, we've got these name tag holders, all the stuff we do says keep moving forward. But I'm also very careful for people to understand that sometimes your next step forward looks very much like a step back. And that's what's vital. That's what we need. It is not just keep running into the same wall until your head breaks. It is maybe we step back and we find a way around the wall, And so I'm glad you said that, because it is what I've discovered is, and this is in every business I've been a part of, it's an ever evolving thing. We start with these vague ideas, and sometimes they're super specific, but these broad, hey, here's what we're going to do. And it looks wildly different 2 years later, and then 2 years after that, and 2 years after that. And we're about to have our 5th anniversary of this business, and I'm amazed at how much it has evolved. And we were just talking today with my team about the idea that we're not all about changing things just to change things. Like I'm not a big fan of change. I'm way too old for that. But I really do like evolving and improving. And so we're always on that track, and we ran into a thing a couple years ago where we realized that from the beginning, we'd been entirely talking about our business in the wrong way. And that realization meant, we've got to redo our entire website. We got to rethink how we talk about this. We got to develop new language, a new story, like you said. I was targeting individual leaders and going, hey, leader, are you burned out? We can help. I would sit in front of a leader and I could not get them to invest $5,000 to fix their burnout problem. I could get them to invest $50,000 to fix their team's burnout problem. And that was an easier conversation. They wouldn't invest in themselves. They would invest in their team. And we discovered that by just whiteboarding every client we had, every problem they brought to us. None of them, not a single one, came in and said, I'm burned out and I need help. Every one of them said, my team is in disarray. We need help. And so we shifted. And if you looked at our website at the time, it was all about individual leader. You burned out, we're here for you, and we totally shifted to the team focus, and it transformed things for us. It totally changed how we do things. But the other big thing through that process is zeroing in on a very specific type of client. And so it's so hard in coaching because literally, like, we do a lot of the same work you do in terms of personality, mindset, all these things. And so while it's always with the leadership focus, it can literally benefit every human on the planet. And that is really hard. I remember sitting down with one of my coaches one time and he's like, who's your target? I'm like, leaders. And he's like, okay, a little more specific than that. And I eventually narrowed it down. I'm like, business leaders. And he's like, nope, keep going. And so we really had to work so hard to zero in. And we're still in that process. Like, we just had a meeting the other day about even zeroing in further and creating content specifically for city managers, police chiefs, because we put out a ton of content, but it's all general for any kind of leader in any situation. But now we're going to start adding to that some very specific, here's the markets that we're really strong in, that we know we can go in and have conversations. And that's hard. That's scary because you're going, but we want everybody, but you're not going to get to everybody tomorrow, maybe in the next few decades. And so be patient. I like what you said about stepping back and slowing down. Like that's vital if we're going to make it in the long term. So that's kind of some of the challenges we've run into, and some of the solutions of just always be willing to evolve things and to raise your hand and go, we've been doing something wrong. We got to fix this. And so that's hard though. It's very humbling.
I love it. I usually like to ask some questions around marketing. You've kind of touched on that for us here, and being able to target down first. And I always like to look at is the difference between who we want to go after and who we allow. Like, we can allow anybody, but that doesn't necessarily mean that that's where we're putting our focus today. The tighter we can get the focus, the greater impact we can have, because we'll actually reach the audience that we're looking to speak to, versus just being noise out there to everybody. So I absolutely love kind of that process, putting it up on the whiteboard. Like, what are our clients actually, where did they actually come from? How did this process actually go, and being able to focus on the area that had the biggest impact.
And we even learned something through that about evolving our offers and how we do things. Beginning of this year, we looked at, it's funny how often you will want something, maybe even pray for something and not get the thing, and then realize a year later, If I'd gotten that, we would be in trouble now. Like we hit a point in January where I went, look, our doing one-on-one coaching is less interesting to me than organizational transformation, which involves some one-on-one coaching, but it's not, hey, individual leader just comes in and they need help themselves. I have limited time. That's not the best use of my time. The best use of my time is trying to go affect this 400 person organization. And so we decided at the beginning of this year, we're not taking any more just individual one-on-one clients, which is a terrifying prospect. But I also look back at literally this time a year ago, I was sitting there going, oh God, we need more one-on-one clients. And if we don't get them, we're going to be in trouble. We got to do this. And like, if we had gotten them, we wouldn't be able to look up in January and actually do the things that we were doing. And so it's funny how even evolving what we do and how we offer it and being willing to change it and being willing to say no to business, it's terrifying, but it is such a vital move. And I think so many businesses get trapped in that. They want every dollar that comes in the door. And some of the dollars are not the right ones, and that's okay.
I love that you said, Chad, you were talking about how sometimes, you pray for something and you realize if you're like, don't understand why you didn't get it.
Yeah.
I think it's powerful in business as well as personal life that if you're just constantly asking for the highest good, it really will work out. That's even when it's not that thing you thought you wanted, but then a year from now, you will be able to look back and be like, I asked for the highest good and I see why that thing I really wanted just didn't happen.
Yes, 100%. And it's funny too, having a long vision for your organization that is broad. Like the joke is that I got another 40 years to do this because I want to die on stage at the age of 85 yelling at people about leadership. And so that's kind of where that's the direction we're headed, right? I'm entirely open to what that looks like. How could this evolve in 40 years? What could we do? I have no clue because I had no clue 5 years ago what it would look like today. But what we do is we just pick a direction and we just kind of go and we see what happens. And there is an openness to that of however this evolves is the way it's meant to evolve. And we're going to apply intention to it. We're going to apply vision to it, but we're not holding everything with such a tight hand that we're trying to just, control it. Because I think you end up choking the life out of what could be. And so there is a lot, and it's a scary path to walk, but I think that's how we find the most impact. I think it's how we have the most impact on the most people.
You could ask so many questions around impact going forward, like looking for the next 3, 5, 10, 20 years, especially in a coaching profession. And maybe y'all have given this a little bit of thought, maybe you haven't at this point. But when we look at what does say 20 years look like to have the greatest impact? There's only so many hours in the day to be the coach all the time. How do you scale that impact longer term? Does that look like adding additional coaches? Does that look like scaling the business itself? Does it look like, I don't know, there's a number of different things that are probably even on the horizon that we don't even know about yet. But maybe let's take just a couple minutes just to kind of like ponder that or just kind of get your thoughts. And then we'll jump into kind of some rapid fire questions as we start to wrap up. But have you given thought to that kind of what does that look like as you go forward in the next 3, 5, 10, 20 years? And how do you scale the impact that you can have as an individual, knowing that there's only so many hours in a day?
Think about it all the time, as I bet Chad does too. But you're talking to an educator, right? So, and you've already touched on the fact that like, why weren't we just taught those things? So, for me, in my business, you're going to see an emphasis on workshops and classes, possibly online learning. I'm open to where it's going to go, right? I have people like Stacy and May from Emergent Tree as mentors, and I'm amazed at what they've been able to create and put out there. But I think, I will always be a teacher at heart. And so not only coaching, but also teaching makes sense for me in terms of impact, right? It's the teach a man to fish story. I know already for me, the next step is going to be creating some classes around the 4 agreements. I try to live by the 4 agreements myself. I think they are essential to a healthy mindset. And I have yet to meet a client that hasn't been able to integrate them in a way that's been beneficial for them. So of course, in my mind, that goes from like one-on-one coaching, just like Chad was saying, to a broader audience when you can offer classes, and you can offer classes at much probably less than you can offer an individual coaching session. And so that
100%.
increases impact, and it opens up incredible clientele to work from a similar mindset, because within the 4 agreements, there's a whole lot of things. And it's certainly not the only thing that I personally use, but I know that that is my next idea. But 3 to 5 years, I'm hoping to be adding, workshops at regular intervals. A big fan of Brene Brown and the Dare to Lead facilitator training. I also use EFT tapping with my clients, and so there's just this huge opportunity to develop lots of different intention specific workshops and retreats. I was hoping to do a retreat this year, actually, but working with Emergent Tree, I am learning that I am not yet ready for that. That in order to give my best to both things, I think a retreat's going to still be like a 2-year goal, not a 1-year goal. And so, but I think the educational piece is essential if you're going to reach a broader audience. So that's what I'm looking at long term. Of course, eventually I hope to be doing PHH coaching full time, but then partnering with people who've made a meaningful difference in my life and do have reach with different types of audiences, because mindset coaching applies to anything. It can apply to leadership. It can apply to education. It can apply to personal. And so I hope to continue to cultivate those relationships and see who wants to collaborate and reach a bigger audience than I could reach on my own.
I like that. I like the patience too of, hey, maybe this is a 2-year thing. We literally ran into that the other day where we were doing a after action report on one of our 2-day events we did. And I dreamed up this entirely different event, and we sat there and we whiteboarded it. We put it on the spreadsheet. We budgeted it out. We did all this stuff. And I'm like, this is awesome. And then we looked at it and we're like, this will be great in 2026. And that has to be okay, because we're not going to burn ourselves out creating new things, as far as scaling goes, I think there is what we've spent the last 5 years doing is thinking through a lot of that, but also kind of developing our philosophy. Because honestly, that's what most people are buying. It takes a lot of different forms. Like I don't believe there's anything new in terms of leadership, coaching, business building. Like there's no new ideas. It's all just rehashing the same things, but there is our specific take on it. And I think as an organization that we don't just want to do coaching. We want to do that, but very similar. There's the education piece. I love teaching. And so it is our philosophy packaged in a lot of different ways. And we have everything from a $135 personality workshop to a $200,000 engagement with an organization. And so we want that kind of span and everything in between. It's retreats, it's workshops, it's coaching, it's courses. We launched our first course last year, and now we're totally redoing and updating based on what we've learned. And we're going to launch the new one in January. And so it's all these different things that are taking our philosophy and applying it in different scenarios. And then if you need if you've got the budget and the time and the need for a 2-day retreat, great. We have a 2-day retreat designed for you. If you don't have the budget for that, great. Here's our online course that will allow you to facilitate these conversations yourself. So we want that ability all the way down to giving away literally everything we teach. Like if you don't have any money, watch every podcast we put out, read every piece of content, like actually do the things that we are giving away, something will change. And it's not the same as having a coach walk with you one-on-one, but it is this ability to impact people, even if they don't have the dollars, and the dollars will follow. That will happen. But it is building that audience. And so I think it's having things at all these different levels that make sense for us and it makes sense for the client. That outside of the free stuff, like everything is profitable. It is designed to be that way. And then eventually adding other coaches, adding more capacity. Right now, I'm our only coach, so there's coaching time, and then there's building all this other stuff out time, which is what my team focuses on. And so that's kind of that's the scaling path we've hit after 5 years. And so 5 years from now, we hope to have a few more courses built out. We hope to have probably at that point 2 to 3 more coaches on the staff so that we can expand that capacity. But that's kind of what it looks like for us. I think that's as of today. I'm also open to all that changing.
I love it. Well, as we begin to wrap up, I've got a few rapid fire questions that I love to ask, kind of quick little nuggets of information for others out there. So we'll go best to our ability, top ahead answers for each of these. We probably could take another hour to go through these, but top ahead answers for these today. And I'm going to go reverse order. Chad, we're going to start with you on this one. What is
Okay.
your key to success?
Key to success. I'm going to say rest. I really think it is. I think because here's the thing, if you rest, you can go forever. And in that time, you will figure the rest out. But if you don't rest, if you eventually break, you're at the core of everything. If you break, you can't do anything after that. You can't show up and figure out answers. So I really think it's rest.
I love that. Paige, how about for you? What's your key to success?
It's very similar. It would be stillness.
Mm.
And of course, rest plays into that. But
Yeah.
I find intentional stillness, whether it's through meditation or sitting under the tree or whatever you need to do, stillness to see where those ideas land. I think that's what gives you clarity moving forward, because we can have so many ideas and we're all highly motivated people and they're all swirling around in our head and they all sound great, but until you're still, they don't settle exactly where you need them to in order to provide clear direction, clear steps moving forward. So stillness.
I like that.
Yeah.
I'll challenge you into a different answer for this one, but what's one piece of advice that you would give to other business owners?
Ooh.
One piece of advice for business. One, learn how to pay your damn taxes. What? Gosh, what would I give? Paige, you got an answer off the top of your head?
I mean, go slow to go fast comes to mind. But again, it comes, everything for me comes back to that clarity. I don't know that you can be too clear. And I think that's, I think I would do this. I just recently even made a video on this one, and it's that the laundry is never done. And that's how I feel about clarity. Just like the laundry is never done, because as soon as you think it's done, you're wearing something. And so something's dirty. It's understanding that your business is never done. It's never clear enough. Now it may be good enough in the moment. That's totally different. But you're always working towards clarity. You're always working towards certain core values. And I think that's what it's about. I don't think there comes a point where you just sit back and hang up your hat and, oh, look, the business is running itself. Well, it can, but that comes with consequences too. So I would just say the laundry is never done. The business is never done.
I think that part of mine is very similar, but it is this idea of defining success with something other than money. You've got to define it based on purpose and impact, because those will drive you in a way that money doesn't. There's never enough money. There is never an amount where you're going to hit it and actually be satisfied long term. And so it is we try to get people to think about the idea of sustainable impact. What impact are you meant to have? And are you running with a rhythm that it is sustainable, that you can do this for as long as you want to do it? And if we can do that, you want to get to the end of the week and money was not the highest thing you were serving. It was, hey, we look at these lives that are better. And I don't care what you do. I don't care if you're laying concrete for sidewalks, or if you're making cupcakes, or if you're coaching, or whatever it is. You get to the end of the week, you need to be able to point to people whose lives are better because you showed up. That is everything. That is so much better than the money. And the money stuff, if you're intentional, if you get the right things in place, you get the right people around you, that will happen. But it is not satisfying like impact. And so I would focus on that. And money, listen, it's loud. When you're first getting started, it is so loud that you're just taking every dollar that walks in the door. And ultimately, that doesn't build anything that you're going to love. So that would be it. Focus on impact, focus on purpose, and do focus on money, but not as the ultimate, because it's not gonna satisfy you.
Mm. Love to dive into that one. I know we don't have time. So one more rapid fire question, and then we'll wrap this thing up here for today. Um, Book recommendations, and I always like to frame it as like one book that either you're currently reading or one that you've read most recently, or if you've got one that just comes to mind, you're like, I've got to recommend this one. We'll take that as well. But what would be a book recommendation?
I'm currently reading Unreasonable Hospitality by Will Guidara. I love, and the subtitle is The Remarkable Power of Giving People More Than They Expect. And I love reading books about totally different industries and going, okay, because I was thinking about our coaching, our courses, all the things we do. I'm like, I don't feel like we're necessarily the best at this. We don't have unreasonable hospitality. We don't do some of the little things we need to be doing. And so I started reading this book, and it is such a good book about just everything when it comes to building business, leadership, vision, values, getting the right team in place. Is one of the best books I've read or listened to in years. So I would highly recommend it.
Love it.
Yeah,
Paige, how
that
about
sounds
for you?
great. I'm adding it to my list. I'm
It's an
currently
easy read too.
currently I'm reading Think Again by Adam Grant. And it's all about, the power of knowing what you don't know. Um, and so it's an incredible book. It is also an easy read. It's available on Audible if you want to do it in the car to and from work. So all of that's great. But certainly I had mentioned it before. Also, the Four Agreements. The thing I love about the Four Agreements is, to me, it doesn't matter if you agree with the spiritual philosophy of the book, but the Four Agreements themselves, be impeccable with your word, don't take anything personally, never make assumptions, and always do your best, are incredible guideposts for keeping you in the right mindset at all times. Really, because be impeccable with your word is really about how you talk about yourself. And so you have to get into self-talk and your beliefs about yourself. Don't take anything personally is one of the most liberating principles I think anyone can experience.
Yes.
Never make assumptions means that you're always clarifying. You're not taking things for granted. You don't think you know it all of those things. And then always do your best. Some days your best is like at 30%, right? Other times it's at 100 and you're the go-getter. But honoring where that is and accepting it for what it is will make a huge difference in how many people you're able to impact and the excellence within your services. So those
I
two.
love that. So to close this thing out, for those that have been watching and just on the edge of their seats with every word that we've been able to kind of go through here today, they want to learn more. They want to follow you. They want to see all the amazing things that y'all are doing, potentially come work with you down the road. Where can we advise the audience to go for more information and to make some additional connections with y'all here?
Go ahead, Paige.
PhDcoaching.com.
If you go to forwardpartners.net/lab, LAB, that's the home for the Leader Lab, which is our podcast YouTube show. And so if you want just a quick dive into the things we believe, the things we teach, that's a great place to start. Every episode is under 10 minutes. We are dedicated to keeping it short. I listen to a lot of 3-hour podcasts, but we wanted something for people that have a short commute. And so one of my creative director is my co-host on that, and she does a phenomenal job. And so check that out. Forwardpartners.net/lab is probably the best place to kind of get to know us.
Beautiful. Well, I will be putting that in the show notes here below. So once we wrap up, make sure that you go down, click the links, check out all of that information. I'll likely throw the LinkedIn profiles, things like that in there as
Please
well,
do.
so they can all connect. If you do connect with Chad or Paige, make sure you send them a quick direct message. Say, hey, saw you on the podcast here, and just wanted to connect. Kind of let them know where you saw their information. So with that, Chad, Paige, I just want to say thank you so much for taking the time to sit down and have some fun conversation with me today. This has been a total blast. And I just want to say thank you for taking the time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tanner and Chad.
But mostly Tanner. I get it. This was a blast. Absolutely. Thank y'all very much.
So fun.